Namaste. My name is Janapati Das, and this is the Bhagavad Gita as it is class. Please accept my respects, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual guru, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, who is my life and soul, and unto my dear spiritual grandfather, the translator and purporter upon this Bhagavad Gita as it is that we are reading through today, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet and ask for my dear grandfather's mercy upon me. We will begin, before we get into the verses, we will begin by the kirtan, some kirtan, and some hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. So please feel free to join along. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasayate Namo Siddha Swarupaya Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasayate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hare Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Jagat Guru Siddhaswara Rupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Continuing, we are on text 15, chapter 3. We're reading from the chapter entitled Karma Yoga. And we have our Karma Yoga, right? The activities that are done, our duties that are done in service of Krishna. And Krishna is explaining to Arjuna the idea of sacrifice and the purpose of sacrifice and the fact that Yajnartha Karma, the proprietor, the owner and recipient of all sacrifices is Krishna. In other words, all sacrifices done are basically to come to know Krishna or know Vishnu. And so we're reading here text 15. Karma Brahmodbhavan Vidi Brahmakshara Samudbhavam Tasmat Sarvam Gatam Brahma Nityam Nyajne Pratishtitam. Karma, work. Brahma, Vedas. Udbhavam, produced from. Vidi, one should know. Brahma, the Vedas. Akshara, the Supreme Brahman, personality of Godhead. Samudbhavan, directly manifested. Tasmad, therefore. Sarvagatam, all pervading. Brahma, transcendence. Nityam, eternally. Yajne, in sacrifice. Pratishtitam, situated. So Sanskrit is a very fascinating word, and because it is the mother of all languages, many so-called scholars debate this, but Sanskrit is the original mother language. In other words, the demigods speak in Sanskrit. You'll find words from Latin and different European type of languages, even words that you'll find in Africa and different languages come from Sanskrit. I remember very specifically my time as a Peace Corps volunteer and also studying music in West Africa. I traveled to different countries in West Africa, and there was a type of music called the lion dance called Simba. And we know, of course, Shinga means lion, like Shringa. Nara is the name from Narayan, right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Shringa is the form of the lion, half man, half lion, that Sri Krishna took form as to protect his devotee of Prahlad in the story in the Hiranyakashipu and Lord Nrsingadev, right? So that's a whole nother thing. That's in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But these words are very fascinating because you'll find that words like bra has to do with bruh, which has to do with expanding, growing out, creating. And so we have words like Brahma and Brahman, divine. It has to do with divinity because Krishna is the source of all energies and different expansions and whatnot. And Krishna expands out through his different multifarious energies to create different kinds of things, including the Lord Brahmas. But these words are very fascinating because you'll see them again. Brahma here is translated as the Vedas, right? And the Vedas were imparted upon Lord Brahma through Lord Brahma in the meditation upon his meditation before creating and entering into this material world. Before he created, he meditated to receive the Vedas and the information to create the universe. And Ma also has to do with like a mother, right? Ma. Sometimes Durga is referred to as Ma, because Durga is the creator of the demigoddess of the material energy, right? So Brahma is a divine creator, where we see also the word mother comes from our mama, our mater in Latin. So you can see it's very fascinating. So it's very fascinating to see the root sources of all language and thought come from as they are expanding, just like in the words Brahma. They expand out into different cultures, and this is why it was a Vedic kingdom one time, a world kingdom. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas. This is text 15. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So, as Bob Dylan so aptly sings, you've got to serve somebody, right? So there's different kinds of sacrifices. And we have sacrifices in our day-to-day life, even in material life. We have to sacrifice certain things. Maybe we're real tired, but we have to go to work, and we make a sacrifice, or our children are hungry, and we, as parents, we sacrifice certain things too. So the sacrifice is constantly seen there. There is constantly seen. And we have different varieties of sacrifice in the material world and in spiritual life. So the Vedas, just like it said here, is directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedas they are the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for spirit souls to find their way back they're lost in the material world. Krishna doesn't leave you out in the material world. Krishna gives you a return map. And the Vedas are, with the regulated activities and different yajnas, were set up for different kinds of consciousness and different people in different kinds of modes of material nature to basically find their way back through this material world, this labyrinth of this world. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also representative in the form of the pure lover of Krishna, who also brings us a torchlight to show us the way out of this material world, much more direct than the other prescribed duties. So here Krishna is telling Arjuna that these activities, these different yajnas, come from Krishna as acts of sacrifice for the living entities to engage in. Yajnartha karma, this is the purport, or the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more expressly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of the Yajna Purusha, Yajnartha karma is the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna. Earlier I said that I meant to say Yajna Purusha, which I brought up last time. Yajna Purusha is a controller, but Yajna Purusha is Krishna. He is the benefactor, the supreme controller, who is the benefactor of all sacrifices. We have to work for the satisfaction of the Yajna Purusha Vishnu, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahman or the transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. I think that's very fascinating. Like the code book, you got these codes to figure out certain things. It's like, people just think that, we can do whatever willy-nilly to try to be happy and find complete satisfaction in this material world. We don't even realize the overwhelmingly powerful material energy is we're like lost at sea, in other words. We're not even in a boat. We're out in the ocean trying to swim whatever way we can go. Oh, that looks like, I feel a tide going this way. I think I'll just go swim that way, The ocean is so powerful. So no matter how heroic you are, then you cannot overcome the power of this material universe to try to find your way out of it. It's kind of like, there's a saying in Hawaii, those of you who don't know in Hawaii, maybe you've seen this, is Eddie would go. And Eddie was, I'm trying to think of his last name, Eddie, anyway, he was a local Hawaiian lifeguard. He was a very beloved member of the community, and they were taking a ride, they have the traditional boats that they take out in Kailua, they just go out in between the islands, but the tides and the undercurrents and between those islands are very difficult to navigate, and sometimes very unpredictable. So a lot of people drown because trying to navigate that, you have to be a real expert in knowing how to do it. And it wasn't that these people weren't experts, but they were just caught off guard by unexpected weather, and they found that their boat capsized and they were hanging on the boat, and they weren't so far out, but they were far out enough, quite a few miles, hanging on there. And Eddie Akau, I think his name was Eddie Akau, he said, I will go swim. Very heroic thing. I will find, because he was seeing sacrificing. He was doing this sacrifice in the purpose of trying to save his boatmates, from all dying, because they were all going to die. They didn't expect anybody was going to come out right away. And so they were saying, no, you can't do that. It's just too. He's a surfer too, these expert surfers too. So he's very strong. But he decided to go, and he never made it back. They found him. They found the rest of the crew. They rescued them, but they never found Eddie. And it was kind of the saying, Eddie would go, that, be brave, because Eddie would go. He sacrificed everything. But he was an expert swimmer and lifeguard, and he still could not make the power of the session. I think that was my main point. Kind of got off the side there of the point, but the Vedas are therefore codes of working direction. So they're ways and means. They're very clear, defined things that you can do, and still, for most people, engage in a happy, relatively happy, and secure life of material sense enjoyment, and still being engaging in religious activities to help elevate yourself consciously. So there are directions, and there are directions to get out of the material world and to receive liberation and et cetera, et cetera. It was very extensive. So modern day, that's just kind of like whatever goes, whatever you do, that's what you do. And we cannot expect the leaders of the society, which Bhaktivedanta coins as the lower than Shudras, like the working class. They're like untouchables practically, the leaders of today. So it's like the blind leading the blind. They're teaching the society to live in a way that they think is good for society, but they're not. It's not. So because of their consciousness. So there was a society, and the Vedic society had working ways of things, and there was a hierarchy of people to direct Brahmins, and Brahmanas to direct society. Anything performed without the directions of the Veda is called vikarma, or unauthorized or sinful work. So we've gone over this subdivision of different kinds of. So the karmic reactions are not even very sinful activities, right? Those sinful activities that we mostly engage in the material world is unauthorized, even outside of the varnashram system. It's pretty much what we're doing in most of Western culture. We're engaging in these sinful activities, which is accumulating huge amounts of karma. So, I mean, the karmic reactions, good and bad, that would happen in the karma situation is, at least regulated. So the karmic fallout was not really that bad. So karma, this word that we have like subdivisions. We even have this word ugra karma, which means very violent activities, which we can think of as rape or murder. We do an act it falls under this vikarma activity. Anyway, lots of words, lots of terminology, but basically the idea is there. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, similarly, one has to work under the direction of the supreme state of the Lord. And the conclusion of the Vedas is that Krishna is the supreme personality of God, and if you surrender to them in love, to him in love, in devotion, then you will be successful to leave this material world. This is the conclusion of the Vedas. There's a lot, but you can't really. It's not like people think if I read the Vedas, then somehow I will come to this conclusion. But there's so much stuff in the Vedas that one can be completely lost without the guidance of a spiritual master. So the spiritual master doesn't recommend that devotees, the average devotees of Krishna, when you're practicing your sadhana bhakti, you're given very simple processes. Chant Krishna's names, and then certain kinds of regulated activities that come along with that. As you develop your love and affection and attraction towards Krishna, the other things kind of fall into place. And these are things that are already in the Vedas. They're all already in the Ashtanga yoga system of yamas and niyamas. And so there's a lot of particulars, and people can get completely lost in what to do without a guide. And this is like the guide who is directing you out of the cave of material existence. It says, okay, follow me. This is the direction you have to go. You don't just go, I'm just going to follow, follow this Vedic system, and you can get completely lost in you saying, Karmakanda, I'm supposed to be doing this kind of thing. And so that you get the point. It's like you follow the directions of your spiritual master, but the Vedas are generally, this is the purpose of the Vedas. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, similarly one has to work under the direction of the supreme state of the Lord. Such directions in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Naishvashitam Etad Yad Rigvedyo Yajurveda, Samavedo, Artavagirashaha. The four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, the Yajurveda, the Samaveda, and the Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. And at the beginning of Kali Yuga, maybe at the end of the previous Yuga actually, the literary incarnation of Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas, because previously they were orally understood from teacher to student. The intelligence capability of the individual was so much greater in previous yugas that they were able to do that. But Vyasadeva, understanding that Kali Yuga, there's so much baggage that comes with it. We've already talked about and experiencing it personally, how Kali Yuga is the Iron Age and it's full of like incapability of mental thought and prone to anger, completely driven by one's passions, etc., etc. And so the four Vedas, namely Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak by breathing air, as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. For the Lord has omnipotence to perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus fathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his directions in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home back to Godhead. So Krishna is capable of multifarious kinds of activities that we cannot do. We can't put food in our eyeballs and eat. We can't smell with our mouth, or hear with our nose, but Krishna can do all these things, activities of different events and abilities through different kinds of senses. And so Krishna allowed the living entities to be born into the material world because of their own desire to not serve Krishna, but just to be Krishna. And so, but he said, here are the Vedas, and when you're ready to come home, it's like, it's just like God gives it's like the parent who, when you're ready to come home and you've had your fun out there, then you're welcome back, and this is the way to get back. Okay. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment, but the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead, having finished his so-called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned souls to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of yajna by becoming Krishna conscious. Even those who cannot follow the great Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of the performance of Vedic yajnas or karmas. So one can chant, even if they're not following all the regulative principles, they can chant. Text 16. Evam plavartitam chakram nanu vartayatita tiha yaha agahyur indriya ramo mogam parthasa jivati. Evam, thus prescribed, pavartitam, established by the Vedas, chakram, cycle, na, does not, anuvartayati, adopt, iha, in this life, yaha, one who, aga, yahu, life full of sins, indriyarama, okay, satisfied in sense gratification, mogam, useless, partha, osanaprita, Arjuna, saha, one who does so, jivati, lives. So Another word, chakram, which is the word circle, comes from. Chakram is, we have like Krishna's chakra, which is the circular disc that he uses to cut off demons' heads. But chakram is circle or a cycle. Chakram. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow this prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin, for a person delighting only in the senses lives in vain. So that's a very powerful statement. To live in vain in a human form of life is so rare and so precious. It is an opportunity for us to inquire about our spiritual matters that we cannot do when we're eating, sleeping, mating, and defending in different forms of life without inquiring. And we come into a human form of life, and what does most people do? Eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and that's it. And I think, if I can accumulate the eating and sleeping and mating and defending myself, defending all the things that I'm previously doing, eating, sleeping, and mating, then I can somehow have a satisfactory and a great life, and then just go out and, then that's my success, which is a completely ignorant view. So we must eat, we must sleep, we must mate, and sometimes we have to defend, but we can also inquire, which we should be inquiring. So a person who's engaging in all those activities without inquiring why they're here, they're living in vain. It's a life wasted, completely wasted. And many people feel that when they start to get a little older. They can't eat, sleep, mate, and defend, can't really eat very well anymore. Used to be able to eat whatever. Like, it happens with the body. My diet has gotten so limited because the other foods I try to eat, either they give me weight gain, or they cause all kinds of different kinds of reactions that I don't like. So I have to cut them out. You can't, sleep so much, or even when you want to sleep, you're just not sleeping as much because your body just doesn't work quite right anymore. You definitely, as you get older, mating is just not, you may want to do it in your mind. It's like that story of the spiritual master who, because the desire for sex enjoyment is still so very strong in the material world, but the functionary part of it is not really so easy anymore, because in the story, they were talking about the power. The spiritual master was talking to his disciple or student about the power of sexual desire in the material world, and he said, you want to see what people focus on, take your lovely, I'm seeing this old man who's about to leave his body, take your beautiful sister with him, and when call for your beautiful sister, and watch the man's eyes. So they did that, and then the brother called his sister in, who was this very beautiful, voluptuous young lady, and the old man's about to die, and he immediately, his eyes focus on the form of this beautiful girl, and the point being that the man who is dying cannot actually do any kind of engagement, but still has the desire for sex enjoyment. So that's how powerful those kinds of things are. You need to have a higher taste in Krishna consciousness to overcome that, and that has value. Sex enjoyment doesn't have very much value. Okay, so we were getting to the point. So a man who doesn't follow the prescribed duties is basically what most people are doing in this society. They're living a life of sin. They're wasting their life in engaging in such activities. I mean, you have to do those kind of things in the material world, but as we've read, you can do it in service of Krishna. Purport: the Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. So If you don't know what the word mammon, that's kind of an old term, and it means matter or sense enjoyment, right? Lord Jesus Christ has said that a man cannot have two masters. He either will be the servant of mammon or the servant of God. So the mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. That is the philosophy that society follows, but you can definitely see it. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above-mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either the three ways, namely karma yoga, which is what we're reading about, jnana yoga, which is using your intelligence in the service of Krishna, or bhakti yoga, devotion and service to Krishna. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. But those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycles of yajna performances. In Kali Yuga, we have been given a performance of Sankirtan Yajna, which is Sankirtan Yajna and Sadhana Bhakti, right, by our spiritual masters, to engage in a practice to purify our hearts. So we don't need to engage in all the fire sacrifices and horse sacrifices and different kinds of rules and regulations per se. These were set up in a way in previous times for the Varna ashram systems to elevate people's consciousness. So, but we have been given, we can't follow those in Kali Yuga because we are stupid. We're lazy and incompetent. So we have been given a very easy process by our spiritual master, but we need to be able to follow that still. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness, therefore they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at a particular demigod mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is a practice of Krishna consciousness. Because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not, therefore, limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. I want to read that because I want to bring up a point. One should not, therefore, limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. So, one of the arguments that atheists make is that the morality that you find in religiosity can be done without putting God in the picture, right? You can be a moral, upright person for the sake of just being a moral, upright person and supporting the society and having a healthy society. That can happen. However, as Bhaktivedanta says here, you should transcend those moral codes. The moral codes are implicit in Krishna consciousness, in your sadhana bhakti and in bhakti yoga. In the process of engaging in the service of Krishna, all the leaves and the branches and the tree is nourished. It's already done. You don't have to externally become a vegetarian, or externally try to be an upright person, or externally you just serve Krishna, and these things will naturally, you want to live harmoniously with people. You know, it's already there. So the point that you can't take God out of, because a lot of times you see communist societies that become dictatorships and like fundamentalist sort of states. They have these moral codes and whatnot. This is this ideal way of one brotherhood, you know, way of living, and they find that people are not. They're not like that. They're in different spiritual steps, you know, and so then you have to we have to force these kind of things, and then you have to. And then you get people who are doing those. Well, we have to get rid of those people, and we have to put them in camps or whatever, or we have to kill them, and it just goes on in order to keep the power structured there, because our idea of what is right is in conflict with what is the reality of human nature. Text 17. Yashtavatma ratil evasyad atma triptascha manavaha atmani eva cha satustas tasya karmayam na vijate. Ya, one who, tu, but, atma ratihi, takes pleasure, eva, certainly, shyat, remains, atma tripta, self-illuminated, cha, en, manavaha, a man, atmani, in himself, eva, only, cha, en, santusta, perfectly satiated, tasya, his, karyam, duty, na, does not, vijyate, exists. So we have this word santusta. So san is perfectly, and tusta is a word that means one who is perfectly satisfied and satiated and happy. I had a godbrother. I never, unfortunately, met him, but he was a pure devotee of Krishna named Tusta Das, and Tusta Krishna Das, perfectly satisfied, servant of Srila Prabhupada, just a wonderful soul, and so that was his name. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So the pure devotee of Krishna, one self-realized soul. And when they talk about, pleasure in the self, it's not like you gotta love yourself, right? They understand who they are. They know their relationship. They are a pure spirit soul. They are a servant of Krishna. They know that relationship, and they act upon that relationship. So there is no necessary external activities or yajanas that he has to engage in to purify his heart, because it's already purified. So the pure devotee, the dear spiritual master, my dear Guru Dev, is Tusa. He is perfectly satisfied. He is taking pleasure in himself. He is illumined in himself, and he rejoiced and is satisfied in his relationship with Krishna. Very wonderful. A person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many, many thousands of yajna performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord, and therefore he no longer has any obligations to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna-conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. So he's not, it's like stool, gold and stool are the same. Sex enjoyment is nothing is attractive to him except for the service of Krishna. And if he can use the things in the world that are material, they are transcendental. Wonderful verse. I'm going to read that again. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Okay, I'll read one more verse. Naiva tasya kriten arto na kretena nea tashchana nakasya sarva bhuteshu kashid arta vaya pashraya. Na, never. Eva, certainly. Tasya, his. Kritena, by discharge of duty. Artaha, purpose. Na, nor. Akritena, without discharge of duty. Iha, in this world. Kashchana, whatever. Na, never. Cha, en. Asya, of him. Sarva bhutesha, in all living beings. Kashit, any. Artha, purpose. Vyapa, ashraya, taking shelter of. So ashraya is a really wonderful word. I've heard this many times, and some of my God brothers and God sisters in the land down under do have a band named Ashraya, shelter. Very beautiful. We take shelter. Krishna is a shelter from the storm. I have a video, if you haven't heard it, in my YouTube channel about coming to meditation. And I tell this story that when I started chanting, I'd only been doing this 2 weeks, and I went to a camping event, a retreat kind of thing, after about 2 or 3 weeks of chanting. And there's more to the story. You can go and hear it. But I was going up a mountain to do my japa up this mountain, and I started to pray because it was so wonderful to find this activity of sadhana bhakti and the practice of kirtan and whatnot. And I started to pray to God. I said, Krishna, or whatever, whoever your name is, because at the time I wasn't sure, please, I said, I'm tired. I can't put any more energy into finding you, and I'm done with this trying to enjoy in the material world, and please let me know if this is the right thing for me to do. Don't lead me on, please. And so that night I had a dream which was the answer. And I was in the dream, and was coming down out of this mountain after the japa walk, and coming down out of a mountain into another valley. And I looked back and I saw there was a storm coming, so I couldn't return the way I was coming. In other words, I saw that as meaning like my life, this is not the way to go back, right? And the storm was coming in, and I had to take shelter for the night. And so I got out my blue tarp and tried to set up, and it was just getting wet and rainy, and it was just this makeshift. I was trying to create my own shelter, still trying to create my own shelter. And then I looked over and I saw a ranger station or cabin, and I thought, I should go over there and take shelter of that cabin because it's so secure and so wonderful. And that was the end of the dream, basically. And it was like I knew that was my answer, that I had to take shelter in this process, shelter in Krishna, and it could not rely on, and I couldn't go back to the way I was living, and I couldn't take reliance of my own shelter, but on the shelter of my dear Guru Dev, of the dear Tustaha, the one who's perfectly satiated, the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, and taking process in Krishna and shelter in Krishna. So it's very wonderful. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in this discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Purport: a self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duties save and except activities in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not inactivity either. So that point has been brought up. He was also Krishna telling Arjuna, it's not about you just escaping from what you have to deal with. You just Christianize it. You know, you work in Krishna consciousness and you do your duty. You're not just trying to hide from all the reactions of the material world or the things that's going to make me attached to the material world. No, it's all about your consciousness. It's all about what's going on in here. I'm pointing to my head, but it's not really your head. You're using your head, but it's like in your heart. Krishna, taking shelter of Krishna. A Krishna conscious man does not take shelter of any person, man or demigod, except for your spiritual master, who is not just an average man. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in the discharge of his obligation. Wonderful. So we will stop there and pick up at text 12 next time. Thank you very much. Haribol.